Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today I thought I'd go for a bit of a drive and tell you guys the story of how I ended up buying my Evo 10, which cars I was looking at to buy at the same time, and why I've kept this car for so long, because this is the longest I've ever owned one car before, being that I've had this for about 5.5 years now. So yeah, I thought I'd just put the GoPro on my head, go for a bit of a drive around. It's a bit of a rainy day today, so I couldn't really do much. And yeah, we'll just run through the story of how and why I bought this particular Evo 10. Alright guys, so unfortunately we got a bit of rain. Hopefully it doesn't get too heavy and you can still hear me over the sound of the rain hitting the windscreen. But yes, let's get into the video. So a bit of backstory. Before owning this Evo, I'd only ever owned Holden Commodore V8s. So Holden is an Australian car maker, or was, and they made the Commodore, which was like their family sedan. And they made that in a V8 rear-wheel drive with a 6-speed manual and an LSD diff. So when I was younger, that's what I was really into. I owned a lot of them. From the early sort of models, I owned an 84 that had like an engine conversion to a modern fuel-injected V8. I had an 87 project car, which was the VL Turbo, so it comes with the RB30 Turbo from the Nissan Skyline. It was a project car though, so it was without engine at the time, but yeah, it had that I was planning on restoring. I had a couple of V6s to start, but then after that, plenty V8s, starting with the Australian build 5-litre V8, and then from then on I owned the LS version, so LS1, LS2, cams, and yeah, decent power, fun to drive for what I was doing at the time, which was just doing a lot of burnouts, and yeah, getting sideways and playing around, because I lived in a small coastal town in New South Wales. But once I moved to Brisbane in Queensland and realised how many great driving roads there were around, there was mountains every direction, and I went for a drive up one of those mountain roads. It was up Mount Evo with a friend, and just realised how bad the brakes, the steering and handling, sort of everything was in that car, and how much better a smaller, better handling car would be on those roads. I saw a lot of Evos up there that day. Then when we were driving home, I got stuck in a pretty major traffic jam up a hill. The car that I had at the time had a very, very heavy clutch. I'd been driving around all day up the mountains, and then to get stuck in this traffic jam, my leg was just dead, and I was just sort of sick of having such a heavy clutch. And so I decided I wanted to sell the car. I wanted to get something different, something smaller, something that handled better, that was easy to park, easy to get around the city. Yeah, and just something completely different from what I'd owned previously. So I decided, yeah, I wanted a smaller car. If it was going to be rear-wheel drive, I wanted it to be smaller and either a 6-speed manual with not such a heavy clutch, but something with a turbo, and something with, yeah, either a 6-speed manual or a dual clutch automatic. I'd never owned a dual clutch. I'd owned a conventional auto and absolutely hated it. It was no fun to drive. So autos were kind of out of the question, but I was hearing lots of good things about dual clutch boxes. I hadn't driven one at the time, but so started off the search. I had a price range of between $15,000 and $23,000, I think it was. Now this was almost 6 years ago. It was before some of these cars went up in value crazy, but so I decided I wanted something Japanese at the start. So I was looking at sort of a lot of the classic JDM cars. So one of my favourite looking cars of all time is the FD RX-7. So really wanted one of those. They were at the time in my price range. I was looking at a few around the 18 to 20 mark. You can get them as low as 13 if they were the, you know, less desirable, high kilometres, not in great condition ones. But I had friends back home who had owned RX-7s, mainly FCs. No one I knew had an FD. There was a few FDs in my hometown, but yeah, I had friends that owned a few different FCs, one of them being absolutely crazy, sort of, wasn't a track car, but almost was, sort of in between. Had a huge turbo on it, didn't spool for a long time, but when it did, it was just violent. But all my friends who had these RX-7s, they had nothing but problems with them. They tried to say, no, it's great, just like everyone does who chooses a type of car and loves it, but I could see how many problems they were having with them. And yeah, if you look after them like they always told me, just the same as with the Evo 10, if you look after it and you buy one that's been looked after, you're not going to have as many problems as people make out. But I was wanting something as a daily driver. I was working about 50 minutes drive each way from home and a bit of highway driving, and I just thought I don't want to have problems with this car. So maybe one day I'll own one, but I ruled that off. I was looking at R33 GTRs. They were in midnight purple, one of my favourite cars. Absolutely love those. And I did nearly buy one for 23,000, but just didn't really think again it would make the best daily driver. I thought if I owned something like that, I'm going to need a second car. And yeah, in ways I wish I had bought that, because that car would be worth a lot more now, but I didn't know. None of us knew that how crazy the prices of some of these cars were going to be. Looked at Mitsubishi GTOs because I really like those. I feel like those are a really underrated sort of 90s, early 2000s car. So yeah, looked at those, and looked at Evo 7s. They were the cheapest of the bunch basically, and they still are. They haven't really gone crazy in value like Evo 8s and 9s have, and the 5s and 6s. But always wanted a yellow Evo 7. So back in my hometown, when I had one of my V8s, I got absolutely gapped by an Evo 7. It was brutal, did not expect it to be so fast. Usually I would pull away from most of the imports in my town. But yeah, this car just, it sounded amazing. I'd seen it driving around but didn't realise it was so modified. And it probably only had like 260 to 300 kilowatts at the wheels, but in an Evo, as I know now, that's totally different to having that power in a rear-wheel drive heavy V8 sedan. So yeah, I had a big appreciation for Evos. I'd always, after that, wanted an Evo 7 in yellow. Plus I love the 5s and the 6s as well. But so yeah, I started looking at Evo 7s, and that got me really into looking at Evos in general. Started finding out that Evo 7's not the most desirable Evo. It's sort of the weaker one. Basically get an Evo 8 is what everyone was telling me. Then the Evo 8s were a bit expensive compared, so I thought, well, if I'm going to be spending that amount, it's going to bump me up into the next price range, because Evo 8s at the time, they were in the 20s and above, Evo 8s and 9s. So I started looking a bit above the price range, decided to go up to 25 to 33, I think, was my next price range I decided to go with. So that kind of, yeah, and I sort of decided I wanted something that's a bit newer. So the Evo 8s and 9s were, you know, in the 2000s now, a bit more reliable, less kilometres, but it also, it brought another few cars that I'd always liked into the search. So a car that I always said I would own, it was one of my favourite cars of all time, was the BMW E46 M3. Absolutely love the looks of those. They are, with the FD RX-7, in my mind, probably two of the best looking coupes ever made. They just, the shape and sound, everything, absolutely love them. Unfortunately with those, they have the two transmission options. One being the 6-speed manual, which is great, and the other one being the SMG, which is more common. You see a lot more SMGs. So the SMG is a single clutch gearbox, so it's the same gearbox in both cars, but one is a manual, one is an auto, and it's a single clutch auto, unlike this car, which is a dual clutch. So with the single clutch, you basically have to lift off the throttle every time you change gears with the paddles or with the stick. And I thought at that point, plus it's going to be a clunky drive, what's the point? May as well just get the manual. So the problem with that being that the manual M3s are a lot more expensive and a lot rarer. So I was trying to buy, at the time, which was the only manual E46 M3 for sale, it was at the top of my price point, but it was in a really nice colour. I like the colour. It was like the sort of dark blue, which is almost black. Yeah, manual, pretty good kilometres, had the few common issues fixed by the previous owner, like the subframe's nose seemed to crack. That was fixed. And so yeah, I was really keen on the car. Right as I started contacting him, the seller took a deposit, and unfortunately the car sold. So I would have bought that car, and I probably still own that car if that had have worked out. But yeah, that didn't happen. So then I was like, right, what else can I get? Because I was so set on the E46 M3 at the time, I sort of decided I'm going to look at the BMW 135 coupe. It's kind of like the same size as an E46 M3. I really like the look of them, and they have the inline turbo 6-cylinder engine, which everyone was saying at the time is like the modern 2J, make great power out of them. I like the sound of them, and yeah, you can get those in 6-speed manual as well. So started looking at those. I really wanted one that I found for sale in Sydney, so about a 10-hour drive, which wasn't too much of a hassle for me because I had family who lived there at the time. I could bring a friend with me. We could drive down in in his car at the time, buy the car, stay at family's place for a night or two, and road trip back, because I really do like travelling to get a new car. Something about road tripping home in a new car that that's what I did a lot when I lived in New South Wales. We'd always drive up to Sydney to buy cars. So you bring a new car back into your small town rather than buying one that everyone knows, and you get to road trip at home. So I was very keen to buy that car. It was white, 6-speed manual, had black BBS wheels, had red leather interior, sunroof, touchscreen, reverse camera, all the options I wanted. And I found out it was a repairable write-off. Didn't have a bad crash, but it sort of turned me off a little bit. So I thought, you know, what else can I get? So I started looking at other BMW 335s and 135s. Started looking into the dual clutch gearbox, and then that sort of brought me back to the Evos, as I knew that the Evo 10 had a dual clutch gearbox as well, and I liked the idea of going in completely opposite direction of a rear-wheel drive V8 and going an all-wheel drive turbo 4-cylinder. The Evo 10 manual, I just didn't like the idea that it only came with a 5-speed manual, so I'd always owned 6-speed V8s. To go down to a 4-cylinder in 5-speed, I felt like with the amount of motorway travelling I'd be doing, I'd be in 6th gear and I'd be sitting at like 3,500, 4,000 RPM at 110 kilometers an hour on the highway, and I thought that's going to be just using so much fuel and not as much fun. Now I find out that gearing's not so bad in them, so they're not that bad, but yeah, it made me look at the MRs, and this is, yeah, 6 years ago, so they were a bit more expensive. They've dropped down in price a bit since, whereas everything else has gone up. So the Evo 9s were in my price range. They were 28 to 32, and Evo 10s were about 32 to 40, and they were still getting made at the time. So, but I did know that the Evo 10 had been announced. It was the last Evo to be made, The final edition hadn't come out yet, I don't think, when I bought this. No, it hadn't. But there was, you know, talk of it, so everyone knew that this is the last Evo, and I thought, well, yeah, some of the other cars I started looking at, I did actually also consider Nissan 370Z, but thought, yeah, it's not really as easy to be modified. I wanted, if I'm going to be getting something that's not a V8 with so much power from factory and potential just to do, you know, cams and heads and stuff, yeah, I wanted something turbo. So ruled off the 370Z, ruled off the BMWs I was looking at, because I thought, no, I want the halo car sort of thing, so I want the M3 or I don't want anything at all. So the Evo 10, the Evo 9, the STI hatch and the 2006 Hawkeye STI were kind of what I was looking at the most at that point. Didn't really like the STI hatches as much. Now I really do like them, but at the time I wanted a sedan, and the 2006 STI, I felt like, yeah, I would rather the Evo 9 over that, and I'd rather the Evo 10 over the STI hatch. Really glad I went in that direction. So yeah, went down to a blue Evo 9 and an Evo 10. I was still looking at getting a manual Evo 10, but decided to test drive this car. Now, if you haven't seen my previous video, which was titled Why I Bought an Auto Evo 10 over the manual, I'll go into a bit more detail about it, but basically I test drove this car as it was the easiest Evo to drive at the time. It was for sale. The guy was desperate to sell it. He was going through a business foreclosure, and he was selling off all his debts, all his assets and everything, so he needed this car gone. He worked nearby and lived nearby me, so he basically said, I'll pick you up from work one day, you can test drive it and I'll drop you back to work or drop you home. So yeah, I did that, got him to pick me up, went for a drive just to sort of test it out. I was unsure about the SST. I was hearing a lot of good and bad things about it, so yeah, I thought I'd test drive it for myself, and it blew me away. Like, the shifts are so quick, so smooth. You hold the accelerator in between shifts, so you're staying in boost. And he was sort of driving it at first, and he was throwing it into the corners. He was smashing through the gears, and yeah, I thought, well, this is definitely something completely different to what I've owned previously. Haven't owned anything like this, so I went home and I just absolutely researched the hell out of them. I watched so many YouTube Evo 10 reviews and exhaust sound clips, and just spent like 3 days basically just watching every Evo 10 video I could find on YouTube, reading every article I could find, looking through all my old car magazines, finding articles on Evos and Evo 10s, and just became obsessed. Decided I wanted to really narrow down if I wanted the manual of the Evo 10 in SST. So I decided to message the guy and say, can we organise another test drive? And I was basically going to test drive it again and then go test drive a manual one. And so on the test drive, he started telling me about his financial situation a bit, that he was basically, if I made an offer, it's very likely he's going to accept it, as he needs the car gone basically by, it was, I think, a Tuesday. He needed it gone by the weekend. And it was me and one other person, so he said, looking at the car. So if I made an offer and just didn't lowball him too much, he's very likely going to take it. So yeah, I drove it. He got me to just, he really wanted me to buy it, so he was encouraging me to just throw it into some corners, which I did, and it just blew me away again. Decided this is the car that I want. So what I did was, he had it advertised for $32,000, and I could have paid close to that, but it wasn't the MR. So I kind of, if I was going to buy an MR, I wanted to have leather. I wanted to have the reverse camera and the touchscreen and the HID headlights. So being that it didn't have that, I figured I'd pay him a bit less, enough that I could afford to buy some used MR seats and buy some headlights and all that stuff, the touchscreen head unit. I figured I'd just upgrade to a Pioneer or something, which obviously I didn't. I got the Android. But so I offered him 27,000, and he said, look, 27,500. I'll put another 6 months rego on it, and it'll be ready for you on the weekend. So yeah, I took it. I didn't even end up test driving the Evo 10. Didn't actually drive one of those till after I owned this car, because I test drove our friend's Evo 10 in manual. So yeah, I bought this before driving the manual. When I did drive my friend's manual GSR, it was nice, and I definitely didn't regret buying the SST after all. And this car's been great to me. I bought it completely stock standard, and since then the first couple of years I just did a few basic things. First year even, all I did was a blow-off valve and a panel filter, and I just loved driving it. It was just so different. Went for just so many mountain drives, got to know the car, found it so much easier to park, even though the steering is so bad, just reverse parking everywhere. So much smaller of a car than the Commodores and stuff I'd owned previously. So yeah, the first year I didn't do much, but then after that started going to a few more, joined a few Evo groups, started going to more meets and cruises, and so many modified Evos were around me, so I started picking up parts, and yeah, just from there I've just gone crazy. I've gone from stock to what it is now, and it's always changing more. I'm addicted to modifying it. I'm always got another mod in mind, and it's a car that I don't think I'll be selling anytime soon. There's nothing in this price range that I'd prefer, and I think it's the best car I've owned by a long shot. So yeah, that's basically the story of how and why I got my Evo 10. Hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure you put a comment below if you have an Evo 10 of how you bought yours and why, what cars you were looking at instead and what you chose. I'm interested to hear what you guys all, how you came to the same conclusion. If you have a different car and you're looking at Evo 10s, you're just watching the video because you enjoy Evo 10s, yeah, let me know. See if I can help you out if you're looking at buying one or something. Make sure you like the video if you enjoyed, and feel free to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more Evo 10 and Rally Art content. Really trying to get to 1,000 subscribers at the moment. So yeah, every subscriber helps, it is appreciated. And I do make a new video every Wednesday and Sunday, so yeah, keep a lookout for those. But yeah, that's it for today guys, and I'll catch you in the next video.